It's yet another episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. We welcome a special guest you can see right below on YouTube. We're going to introduce her in just a sec, but we got a lot to get to. We're just going to talk some Coyotes hockey on today's episode.
Your Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everyone. This is Locked On Coyotes. I'm Robyn and Leah. That's Carl Pavlock right beside me. We want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We are 100% free and available wherever you get your shows. We got a good episode on today. We have a special guest, as you can see below us, Leah Merrall from PHNX Coyotes, another one of the daily shows out here in Arizona. Leah, it's good to have you on to talk just some Coyotes hockey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's going to be quite the day. I mean, we don't like it's one of the first days in a while. It's like, well, we don't really have a lot to talk about, but it's the one thing I always thought about. It's been a long time since you and I have good.
I know.
Chat. It's been years, because a lot of people probably know that you were down here in Tucson a long time ago when you were working with the Roadrunners and also at the U of A. But let's talk some Coyotes hockey as well. It's good to have you.
Absolutely. Robyn and I were some of the only people at the U of A who were hockey fans and people who aspired to be in hockey media. So we go way back to our times in Tucson.
Oh, a lot of those times, especially the 2 p.m. Friday Arizona Wildcats games when no one was in the stands and it was just you and I just talking random.
Just us in the press box, or the days where it was the U of A doubleheader, the 2 o'clock U of A game, and then the 7 o'clock Roadrunners game, and we're in the building for 12 or 13 hours. But it was fun times.
It absolutely was. But now you're up with PHNX. You got two great guys you're working with Craig Morgan and Pete. Tell me what that's like, because that's like you guys seem like you really enjoy each other.
Yeah, we really do. It's funny. I didn't know them before I started this. I mean, obviously, I knew who both were. I actually worked with Petey's son Jackson at U of A hockey when we were both at the U of A. So I knew Jackson before I knew Petey, which is pretty funny. But I think the three of us got along right away. It was kind of intimidating, two guys who'd been, in different positions, but been in the professional hockey world for so long. But they both just made me feel so comfortable, and we've really developed a good chemistry. I think it's really fun working with them. They both bring something different. Craig has his years of journalistic experience and his expertise. And he's also really funny. I think he doesn't get credit for how funny he is. And then Petey, obviously, on the coaching side, has all of that knowledge and expertise. And he's just a ball of anxious energy, and he's really creative. So it's been really, really fun working with both of them.
Yeah, it's definitely good chemistry. I know I have not seen anyone complain about it, which is rare because it's sports broadcasting. Like, people are going to complain about everything.
Yeah.
Only nice things I've seen, which is great.
Yeah, definitely as a family.
But one thing obviously should bring up is, PHNX obviously rounding out their first season, covering the Coyotes, and it's awesome because we're seeing a lot more Coyotes media get podcasts out there, and it's to see all the different perspectives and seeing all that. But rounding out that first season though, how's that been? For you, obviously, being now covering the Coyotes full time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was my first time covering the team full time. I've obviously followed along over the years as a fan, but it was, this was a challenging season this last season. And you both know, not a lot of wins. It's a lot easier to cover a team when they're winning. Down the hall from us was the Suns crew covering the Phoenix Suns and their successful season. So a little bit of jealousy there, but it was really awesome. I mean, a lot of, those games in the middle there where they're losing, by 4 goals or more, so much in a row. You're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? But I think the people you work with make it great. And then also just all of this stuff about the future is so exciting for this team. It'd be one thing if there was no hope. I think there's a lot of teams in situations that I wouldn't want to be in where, like, are they going to rebuild? What's their plan? You don't really know. I'd rather be covering this team now really bad, knowing that there's a lot of good stuff to come, than, maybe somewhere that's like in the middle of the pack with no real identity. So it was a really fun first season, a really interesting one. And I think it'll make future seasons when the Coyotes have more success a lot more fun too.
Say what you will about Bill Armstrong, but he definitely made sure that everyone knew the team was rebuilding.
Yep.
Just shipping out anyone with a
hide
pulse.
behind it. No hiding behind it whatsoever.
Absolutely. You got to respect it.
It was funny though, because we were actually questioning it to start, right? Like, this was last summer. And I like when I was doing the show, solo, Carl wasn't on full time yet. And I was like, what's going to happen with this offseason? Are they going to completely rebuild, or do I set a price tag? Do we start setting a price tag on Connor Garland? Because I've been talking about him all season long prior, and then it drops, and I'm like, well, let's actually start the ground up rebuild, because this is the signal.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to, Carl just said it, you have to give Bill Armstrong credit. There's been so many years where they've started to go that way, but they've never fully committed. And I feel like the moves that they made, it was a full commit to the rebuild. Getting rid of Connor Garland was part of it. Getting rid of Oliver Ekman-Larsson was part of it. And just kind of stripping down and bringing in all those first round draft picks. I mean, the Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Garland trade got Dylan Guenther in the draft, and then the Darcy Kuemper trade got another first round pick. So just a lot of moves put in place last summer. But it is funny because being a fan, at least, of this team for so long, you've never seen a full commitment to the rebuild. So I feel like there's always that inherent skepticism. It's like, is it really going to happen? But it seems like it is. Hopefully, still early.
Yeah, like the early rebuilds, it was like shipping out like Martin Hansel, Bodker. Like they were kind of like smaller moves. I think not re-signing Mike Smith was probably like kind of the biggest indication, but yeah, you're right. Although I'm also not sure if the team really had like the pieces to like ship out like that. In the same way, like Connor Garland was fetching a price, Darcy Kuemper was fetching a price, and they went on to have pretty good seasons. Like you can see why the Colorado Avalanche wanted to get someone like Darcy Kuemper in net.
Absolutely.
We're talking with Leah Merrall of PHNX Coyotes, PHNX Sports, on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. We're just talking Coyotes hockey and a lot of different things on today's episode as we continue through this offseason. Before we get into any more, though, I want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Right here in Arizona, obviously, it is getting really, really hot. And the monsoon season comes, and I'm pretty sure the last thing you guys want is for your car to break down and you have to take it to a shop and have to pay an arm and a leg to get it repaired. Why not just get it done beforehand? You can get parts from rockauto.com. Save yourself a lot of money. You can save yourself 50% or more on parts. And again, it's a family business. They're in do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and it's just got everything from a bunch of different makes and models. So go ahead and check it out yourself. You guys can go to rockauto.com and check out all the parts available for your car or truck. And while you're there, be sure to tell them that Locked On sent you and their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. And we have an important favor to ask you guys. We put together a survey so we can learn more about the listeners like you to make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes the survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. But take our audience survey. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. And thanks again for your help. So once again, Robyn, Leah, Carl Pavlik, Leah Merrall on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. And one of the things I keep thinking about, Leah, I think is just when this season, just covering the Coyotes and just covering the Coyotes organization. Because again, like I mentioned before, you were part of the Roadrunners organization before that. What would have been your favorite stories covering the Coyotes this year or when you were with Tucson?
Well, I'll have to think on Tucson, but just looking back at this year, I think some of the moments for me was the Schmaltz 7-point game was
That's a
crazy.
good one.
That was electric. That Eastern Conference road trip where they were winning a ton of games, like it was kind of stressful because you thought, oh my gosh, are they gonna watch this and miss out on picking in the top of the draft? But they got back to the program a little bit later on, but that was a blast. So it's always these pockets of when the team is winning and having success that makes it really fun just to see the Schmaltz and Keller chemistry this season, to see how they were growing. I think also Karel Vemelka's first shutout against Winnipeg, I believe, in November. That was a ton of fun. So those were some of my favorite memories for sure. This past season, when I worked for the Tucson Roadrunners, it was the second season that the Roadrunners were in Tucson. It's funny, like I really can't think of anything. It was a good team at the time. I remember that, but they made the playoffs. They did not get out of the first round, I don't think. But
They beat the Barracuda in the first round,
okay,
and then lost
maybe.
to the Stars in the second.
There you go. Your memory is better than mine. But what's cool now, looking back on that team, was Dylan Strome was on that team. Lawson Krause was on that team. I think the first year, not the year I worked for them, but I still went to games the first year. Christian Fisher was on the team. Connor Garland, obviously on the team. Michael Bunting on the team. So all of these players that I got to, be there for while they were in the AHL, then to see them go on and have the success they've had. I think Bunting and Garland are two perfect examples of players who really did their due diligence in the AHL and went on to have really successful careers so far. It's really cool to have been part of that in Tucson, seeing them there, and now seeing the success they're having in the NHL. So those are just to name a few Coyotes season memories, and then some Roadrunners significant moments, I guess.
One thing I got to ask, because the one thing I remember that happened during the Roadrunner season, that specific Roadrunner season, and I can't remember whether or not you were there. You might have been in the room at this time. At this one, you probably were. It's just not coming to me. But it was right before the All-Star break, when they were getting ready to go to the All-Stars, and Mike Van Ryn, just the coach at the time, just goes off the rails on officials.
I don't know if I remember that. I don't.
That's always a fun memory. Seeing a coach complain about the officiating, especially like in all the things that have come out in the past couple of years. It's great to complain about officials sometimes.
It was funny because I wrote an article about that then I was writing for AZ Desert Swarm, and I didn't switch over to Fight for Howling yet. And I wrote, it pretty much says Mike Van Ryn calls the refs, I forgot what he called them, whatever, and lost to the Chicago Wolves or something. And later during the playoffs against Texas, there were some very obvious bad calls. And because I knew the way Mike Van Ryn was, I was like, you know what, let me see if I can ask him. And he's like, I'm not going to comment about the officials this time. I got in trouble last time. What was funny, though, because the first time he's like, and I know I'm going to get in trouble for all this, but I just don't care.
Yeah, sometimes they don't care and they'll just, take the heat to say it. But I don't remember that. But I'll take your word. I'll have to go back and read your article from the time.
I mean, what Mike Van Ryn do after that? Just go on to be with the St. Louis Blues, win the Stanley Cup. Clearly,
just to
ruined his career with that comment.
Yeah, exactly.
I had to bring that one up though, because that's one thing that whenever I talk to anybody covering the Roadrunners, I always bring that up because that was a pretty fun time.
Yeah,
so that year was a really good year.
Yeah, it was fun. The team won a lot, so I remember having a lot of fun working for the team at the time.
I guess a couple other things too. Maybe even not just covering the Coyotes, but of course, being a Coyotes fan, there's a lot of, like, I guess a lot of emotions, a lot of different things that happened in the last few years, like that any of us can talk about.
Yeah. Well, where do we go back to, and what category do we start with, good or bad? Because the bad seems to outweigh the good, I think.
Yeah. It's mostly bad, and then there's some pockets of good. And that's pretty much my entire time, like, covering the Coyotes and being a Coyotes fan. Just a decade of mostly bad.
I remember when I first came here to Arizona, and I had my radio show at the U of A, and I was like, I would bring up the Coyotes so many times, and I'm just like, my God, just talking about the Coyotes just makes my head hurt.
I know. Well, I mean, if we're going to talk about good memories, you have to talk about 2012. And I don't think you were in Arizona yet.
No,
Robyn,
I was not.
Yeah. So I was in high school at the time. And I was actually at the game 6 against the Nashville Predators when the Coyotes won to go to the Western Conference final. And it was like one of my top all-time moments as not just a hockey fan, not just a Coyotes fan, but as a sports fan. Just being in the building with seeing the whiteout, the electric atmosphere. I mean, these were a group of fans who never experienced this before and still haven't experienced it since, but maybe one day. But that's one of my all-time favorite memories, the 2012 Cup run. And I have so much hatred for the LA Kings because A, you have to as an Arizona sports fan, but B, because of them spoiling that run for the Coyotes. So when I think about good, positive memories, that's one, obviously, that stands out for me. I'm sure it does for a lot of people.
Yeah, I was at that game. I remember the Beat LA chant at the very end when you could just, like, Nashville was out and people were anticipating, like, that next round. Very electric. I remember that Chicago series too, and that one seemed to be, like, just really good atmosphere. Yeah, and the only time the Coyotes have won a playoff series was that 2012 year.
Hey, unless you want to count the bubble, but I don't know if that counts as winning a playoff series.
It counts as postseason technically, just not playoff.
Yeah, it's postseason success, but
which is why we make the joke that the Coyotes have more postseason series wins in the last.
I think 17 years or something.
Yes, than the Toronto Maple Leafs do.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's tough out here. It's tough. But, some other things like the Shane Doan hat trick. Mm-hmm. And also, I don't know if you two were there, but the last game at Gila River Arena was kind of special. Like,
that was wild.
Yeah.
I was not at that one. I actually had to work for my then day job at the radio station. But I went to the week before, where there was another interesting comeback that came out of nowhere. But that last one was wild. I was watching from TV.
Yeah, and it was just a really great atmosphere. It was one of the best. I mean, I didn't go to a ton of the games this year just because we were covering the games from the studio, but just games that I've attended as a fan, being part of that last one, and when they made that comeback, and at that point it didn't matter, like, if they won or lose the game, it didn't really have an impact on their draft picks. But if you're gonna close out a game in a building the way that they did it, and that atmosphere, I would have thought it was a sold out building if I didn't know otherwise, just based on the atmosphere.
Gila River Arena was really nice. There was just all that baggage that came with it, being in Glendale and dealing with Glendale and everything else. But, like, I'm gonna miss Gila River Arena.
Me too.
I've only been to, like, one concert there, and most of the bands I see now don't play arena shows. So it's like, I'm probably never going to go back there for anything.
You don't want to see professional bull riding at Gila River Arena? Come on.
No, I really don't.
Not much of a reason to be on that side of the valley anyways.
Yeah. And I live so much closer now, and I still don't want to go to that side of the valley.
Yeah, the building itself is nice. Like, I wish they could have just picked up the building and
moved it.
Yeah. And that's not a knock to the people of the West Valley. It's just that it wasn't the right place. But you know what? I feel like I grew up there in a sense. When I moved to Arizona, my mom actually worked for the Coyotes our first year living here, and being from Canada, that being at a hockey game, I felt at home. It was a huge culture shock moving from Toronto to Phoenix. It's two completely different places. So for me to get to spend time at Coyotes games, it was a sense of home for me. And that's what I'll always think of Gila River Arena as, even though there's a lot of icky memories associated with Glendale and Gila River Arena. Like for me, it always will have a sense of home.
Right. One thing I want to get to before we get to another quick ad, Leah, is of course being a high school student during the early 2010s. There was a lot of hype around Austin Matthews around that time.
Yep.
Like, what was that like? Then, because I'm pretty sure Scottsdale was probably all talking about this kid.
Yeah, well, it's so funny about this. So I went to Horizon High School. They actually have a pretty good high school hockey team. And a few of my good friends were on the hockey team at the time. And when you play youth hockey in Arizona, especially then, it's just so interconnected. Everyone knows everybody because this isn't Minnesota or Massachusetts where there's a billion hockey players. So and Austin Matthews, I think, is the birth year. He's 2 years younger than me, or one. I don't remember. I think 2. But anyway, a lot of my friends from high school grew up playing hockey with him. But I didn't know that his name was Austin Matthews. When they talked about him, they called him Poppy because that's his nickname, and that was his nickname forever. So they would talk about Poppy. Oh my gosh, Poppy's so good. Oh, we were hanging out with Poppy in this. So I was just like, oh, this Poppy kid is great. And then when Austin Matthews, his draft year and the hype of him possibly going first overall, blah, 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 he's from Arizona. And I was like, wow. And someone was like, yeah, that's Poppy. And I was like, what? Oh my God. I literally never made the connection because to me, and when I was in high school, I just knew about Poppy. I didn't know who Austin Matthews was, but it's the same person. So that's my little story about hearing the buzz around Austin.
I'm just surprised his nickname of Poppy goes back to high school. That is not a nickname I would expect for a high schooler.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Absolutely love it. Once again, we're talking with Leah Merrall of PHNX Sports on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes, as we just talk about a lot of different things, from covering the Coyotes to just what it's like being a fan. We're going to get to more of that in just a moment, but first, we're going to go to a quick word from Carl.
So I have a message from our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, Major League Baseball, and of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC right down to boxing. The Stanley Cup final is going to be starting today. So definitely feel free to head over to BetOnline, get some information. I think pretty much everything I've seen has the Avalanche as the favorites, but definitely want to stay up to date. And BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering info, including live betting, esports, and more. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right. So one thing I definitely want to talk about, Leah, is we're now close to about 2 weeks removed from that city council meeting, the wildness of it. Obviously, I'm pretty sure you like me were, tuned in remotely because you had to get ready for a show.
Yep.
But man, the emotions going through that.
Man, I mean, yeah, I actually texted Robyn after and I said, I can't, or maybe it was in the 8th hour. I can't believe we're doing this. It was interesting because obviously if you followed the team for a while, you've been a part of, or either just by association or actually watched or been to city council meetings before, but usually with the city of Glendale. So this was my first time tuning in to one as an adult. It was my first time tuning into one for that long, and I've attended city council in journalism school, but nothing like this. It was the first 2 hours when the Coyotes were making their presentation. I was amped. That presentation got me so hype, and Then the call to the audience happened, and that was a lot. And it kind of started to get repetitive after a while, like the people in support and the people in opposition. It was kind of, similar stories over and over. But I think overall, and obviously the fact that they voted yes to continue negotiations was a positive result. It was like the most hope that I felt in a really long time when it comes to the future of this team. I think, like I said, that presentation was so amazing. And not just the Coyotes fans who showed up, but the Tempe community members and residents of Tempe who were excited for this. I think, when you start to think of all it can be outside of even just the hockey arena, but the entertainment district as a whole, and what that could be as a tourism destination, for Gary Bettman to come on and say that the Coyotes would get an all-star game, a draft, and also a 30-year no relocation clause. That was the biggest thing for me, because I don't need to see another person on Twitter saying move the team to Quebec or move the team to Houston. I can't do it. So those were like kind of my takeaways, and it got me excited. I think that the city council, obviously the people who were against it, but the people who are open, and I think being open is really important, because that's how you're gonna get this done and signed and shovels in the ground. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I remember going to Glendale City Council meetings in 2011 and 2012, and just thinking, like, there's only so much of this fans are going to take. Like, eventually fans are going to get tired of going to city council meetings, and they really haven't. And it's quite the dedication. And I always admire it. Like, just seeing people wearing hockey jerseys outside of standing outside in 100-degree heat.
Yeah.
It's like, I would not do that.
That's why I get so upset too. It's like, oh, the Coyotes have no fans. Coyotes fans. It's like, what fans of any team are going to show up to a civic thing, like a local politics, and fight for their team? Literally, like watching an 8-hour city council meeting. It's not the most fun thing ever, but people showed up, and not just this time, but in all the years past, and all those meetings, like you said, in the early 2010s. Like, people care. People want this team. That's why I'm so frustrated when people talk smack about Coyotes fans, because I think Coyotes fans are some of the most passionate fans in the entire NHL.
And they get tested a crazy amount too.
Let's just hope the payoff is good in the end. We've put in a lot of work here over the last 20 years.
Yeah. Especially since that meeting was not to approve the arena. It was to continue discussions about the arena.
Yeah.
Like, that could have very easily been like a very quick meeting where you're like, yeah, we support this. And everyone's like, okay, yeah, we'll just move forward. But no, like, it was 8 hours of just pure dedication from everyone involved. Even the people who opposed it, like, I would not wait 8 hours for something that I was opposing that clearly was going to pass. Like, that just seems like hopeless. Yeah. But it was a time. Definitely that video was cool though. Like the Coyotes presentation, just phenomenal stuff.
The video that they tweeted out afterwards of what it would look like. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Sign me up.
Every now and then I hype myself up. I just take a look back at it again. So, this is what we're working towards.
Next time the Coyotes lose 8-0 in like the 5,000 seat arena, you're like, you just pull out the video. It's like, all right, this is what we got.
That's another test Coyotes fans have to taste. The 5,000 seat arena that every other hockey team is just gonna talk crap about.
I think it's gonna be electric.
Oh, it's gonna be loud. It's going to be really loud.
I can't wait.
I just like the fact that it's right by the light rail, so I can just not worry about driving to a hockey game ever again. Just hop on a train, kick back, and relax.
Yeah, it's going to be so much more accessible for so many people, which will be great.
Yeah, we're finally on the right side of the valley, where all the hockey fans are.
And just where all the action is. And you know what? If a player does feel like, oh, it's 5,000 seats, they're going to be very happy to be in South Scottsdale or Tempe versus the Renaissance Hotel in Westgate. Trust me.
Oh, yeah. Craig tweeted out that article about all the great food options on the East Valley.
Yeah.
And then that's when I learned they didn't like spinatos. And
Yeah, Craig has some questionable food takes.
yeah.
Which is why I'm glad you tortured him with ketchup on hot dog.
Oh, of course.
I think it was the Christian Fisher episode where he's just like, I think you just don't like ketchup in a way that's beyond Chicago.
Yeah.
It's a you thing. It's not a Chicago thing anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
Absolutely
true.
love it. But we're getting close to just about out of time of this episode of Locked On Coyotes. Leah, where can, obviously, a lot of listeners probably overlap, but in case not, where can listeners find you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Leah Merrall, just my full name. And you can follow our show at PHNX Coyotes on Twitter at PHNX_Coyotes as well.
Absolutely wonderful. Leah Merrall, once again, thanks for coming on. And we are just about out of time for this episode of Locked On Coyotes. We want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day once again. And go ahead and tune to our Locked On NHL show, because they got all the stuff coming up to get you ready for the Stanley Cup final. We're going to have that coming up all throughout the next couple of weeks. It's going to be absolutely exciting. Anyways, if you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe. If you have yet to already, we are available everywhere you get your shows, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with all of us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, on Instagram at LockedOnCoyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robyn _Leano. It's Robyn with a Y _LEANO. Carl Pavlock is Carl Pavlock FFH. Interact with us, ask the question you might have. We might answer right back, or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Thanks, Leah, once again for joining us. And as another teaser for you guys, as a reminder, tomorrow Will Skelch from Skelching is going to be joining us to talk about some Arizona Coyotes or draft prospects, rather. And it's going to be an exciting one. So you would want to tune in for that. Anyways, hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.